Today, we discuss the most difficult tier in the draft. These are those picks that are going to make or break your league. So make sure to stick around and find out what types of trades we're making, who we consider playing here. And if you've already picked, what we might be considering doing with those players you have already picked as well. Stick around to find out. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. I'm your host, Justin, and joining me today is just JP. David is under the weather. Today, we are starting a short series reflecting on the different tiers we're seeing develop in the NFL draft and how to navigate them. Today, we want to break down what we consider to be the most interesting tier so far, and that comes from the 109 to the 201. I think you could argue this tier extends a little bit further, but we want to go more in depth on these picks because a lot of these have that magic number 1 in front of them and are therefore valued quite a little bit higher. So, JP, we are going off of the basis here that we have taken the big 3 wide receivers, Adunze, etc., the big 4 QBs, including JJ McCarthy, and we still are taking Brock Bowers at 108 at this point because we are 1.75 tight end premium for our basic format, and we just believe in the talent. If you want to push Bowers down a little bit into this next tier, say take him at 109, take your guy at 108 if you have a need. We don't necessarily blame you. So given the guys we have off the board, who are we considering in this big cluster of players that people are interested in?
So we're going to be looking at some first-round wide receivers here in Brian Thomas Jr., Xavier Worthy, and Ladd McConkey, who was not first round, but he was top of the second. Chargers traded up for him. And we also have Jonathan Brooks, Bo Nix, and Keon Coleman. He's also in this range. And we've also seen Troy Franklin somehow be in this range. But some other guys who are also first-round wide receivers who could be in this range would be Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette. Some crazy people consider Michael Penix to be in this range as well.
Yeah, I think it's crazier to consider Troy Franklin in the range than Penix, but I'm not really considering either of those guys until a lot of the players we're mentioning here are off of the board. A lot of names. Can you go ahead and just give me the number of players that you think this tier entails? I'm excited to get to that part later. But first, of course, we're going to hop into some trade values here. We want to evaluate what we can do with these picks, as well as what can we do with these players if you've already drafted. So don't worry, if you've already drafted, we will give you some content that is going to be valuable as well. So first thing, trade I made in one league. All 3 of us are in together. I had the 109. JP actually sold me this 109. I was targeting Xavier Worthy, my guy. I love this guy. If you've listened to anything, I love Xavier Worthy. And I specifically targeted this pick for him. However, I traded the 109 and 2 thirds for the 201, which I consider to be in the same tier, Amari Cooper, and a 25 third that's projected to be the 301. So an upgrade of a 25 third as well. I'm competing. I knew I'd still get a player I love at the 201. I get Amari Cooper, who slides in right now as my wide receiver 5 in this start 10. I think if you can get some decent value back and move back in the tier, unless you have a specific need, maybe you need to get Jonathan Brooks because you need that running back. I actually got Jonathan Brooks. I was excited about that. Didn't need the running back, but I'm not upset. So this is a format I really like. JP, how'd you feel when you saw this one come across?
Yeah, Jonathan Brooks, he's probably a top 15 dynasty running back right now. I don't know if a lot of people really think about that yet, but I'm not particularly high on Amari Cooper myself. I thought this was a great deal for you. As I mentioned, I have 5 players in this tier, so moving from 109 to 201, you're still right in that tier. You want to be at the back end of the tier, as opposed to the top anyways, if you can trade back and get some value, which you did with Amari Cooper. And you traded 2 thirds for much the 301. I mean, that's probably about fair as well, so that doesn't even matter. But yeah, I mean, Amari Cooper is coming off a top 24 season. He might take a step back a little bit, but at the very worst, he's a pretty solid flex option and maybe even a top 3 wide receiver in your team if he really steps up. I don't know about your team. You gave a little humble brag. Your wide receiver group is pretty pretty darn strong, I'll say. But yeah, it was a really strong trade.
I got to figure out a way to beat David in that league. So, all right. we're going to move into our rapid fire segment. So we're just going to go back and forth. I'm going to start you off, JP, with all of these trades we're going to show you. They are trades from dynasty-daddy.com, trades that happen in real leagues. We'll give you the number of starters. If it's half PPR, we'll mention it. If it's full PPR, we won't. So just assume it's full PPR if we don't say anything else. First one, start 9.5 PPR. We saw Keon Coleman or 3.25 seconds, JP. I thought this was interesting. What are you doing here?
Yeah, spoiler alert, I don't have Keon Coleman actually in my tier from the 109 to 201. So I see him as, a top of the second, middle of the second kind of wide receiver talent. So if I can move that for 3 future seconds, I'm definitely doing that. And you're getting a lot of flexibility with those 3 seconds to make other trades to improve your team. Next trade we have up here is Lad McConkey for Debo Samuel. Who you got here in a start 10 full PPR?
So I think this one is just, am I competing or am I not competing is a huge factor. If I'm competing, I think I'm going Debo. If I'm not, I'm probably tempted with Lad because I think it's easier to turn Lad into a 25 first. I've seen a lot of people try to trade Debo for a 25 first and not be able to do it. So simple answer for me, competing, Debo, otherwise Lad. Little bit less of an age gap here. Brian Thomas Jr. or Jeroge Pickens. Just kidding, I can't spell. George Pickens. If you're on YouTube, you'll notice my typo there. So do you want the younger George Pickens or the older George Pickens?
Yeah, I think Pickens is literally the comp for Brian Thomas Jr., funny enough. I like the landing spot that Brian Thomas Jr. got with Trevor Lawrence, but we just know in the NFL that George Pickens is good. We've already seen that in the NFL, so I'm just going to go ahead and stick with him because, as you mentioned, the age gap really isn't that big here. So the next trade we have up is Xavier Worthy or Jonathan Brooks.
So this one right here, we have no points per carry, so I probably will take Xavier Worthy. If there's any points per carry, I'd probably take Brooks. I could still definitely justify taking Brooks over Worthy. In a vacuum, I'm going Worthy. But if I don't have a solid running back room, I could definitely go Brooks. If I'm competing this year, I need to win. I'm probably also leaning a little bit towards Brooks as well, but my heart and in a vacuum and long term, I'm betting Worthy. JP, moving from players to picks, the 109 or Kyron Williams?
I could see it go either way here, honestly. If you're rebuilding, I'm going to go the 109, but I think in a vacuum, I'm just going to stick with Kyron Williams. He was incredible last year. Yeah, Blake Corum is there, but historically, we've seen Sean McVay stick with one running back. And Kyron, he was so good last year. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stick with him here now. But it is pretty tempting to go 109, and I probably would if I was rebuilding. Always gotta have that caveat. Next one we have up is Devon Achane or the 110.
So if I am competing, I'll be honest with you, what I probably will do is take Achan here after his first boom week, try to sell him for a 25 first and Devin Singletary or Zach Moss or whatever running back after the first 3 weeks shows that they've got the lead on the backfield. Because I think Achan is more valuable than the 110 or who I'm going to draft at the 110. I don't know that he's worth more than that right now, but in season when he's performing, he is. So give me the package with the caveat that I'm probably looking to move him later. Again, only if we're competing. We're not taking these running backs over picks if we're not competing. So we're not going to mention that again in this part of the segment. Next one, 111 or Josh Jacobs, JP?
I think I'm going to lean with the pick here. Josh Jacobs, he didn't have the best season last year, efficiency wise, was a little disappointing. And with the Packers deal, 4-year deal, but they can get out of that contract with no penalty after the first year. So if he doesn't return back to his efficient ways, that we saw 2 years ago, he's probably gone, and we don't know if he's going to get another team to invest in him again. So I'm going to stick with 111 here in this proposal. And the next trade that we have up is James Cook or the 112.
I think I have to go the 112. It's hard. James Cook's a tough valuation. If James Cook has the same role he had the back half of the year last year, I could see wanting James Cook over the 112. They've added a few running backs to that room. Frank Gore, who I like, is an undrafted free agent. Ray Davis, big kind of more bruising type of like a little bit of a goal line back that I think already Josh Allen is vulturing touchdowns from him. Now we have another guy potentially doing it. I think I would rather just re-roll into the 112. James Cook only has 1 year left on his contract after this year. I think I would re-roll if I could.
I tend to agree with you. I mean, you got asked about both guys that were smaller in Achane and James Cook. It's just so hard to trust those guys. We don't know if they're going to be the guys that are going to be the workhorse. I mean, is that kind of what your hesitation is with those guys as well?
With Achan, that's My hesitation is probably just injury. I don't care if he's a workhorse or not, but James Cook, we have seen, I think that he does not have the ceiling unless he's getting volume, and then he's potentially like touchdown dependent to really like reach the peak, and he's probably going to have to get touchdowns from 15, 20 yards out. Achan is a blind spot for me, like he is, I think, kind of for all of us a little bit. We kind of acknowledge that. Like we joke about like we know we should value him higher, but it's just hard to, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. He's so tough because our worry was he's so small. Is he gonna be able to stay healthy? And he was so good year one, but he didn't stay healthy. So it's like, man, I don't know if he deserves to be a top 8 dynasty running back. I definitely see the argument for why he would be for sure, though. But you had a lot of running backs involved here. It's a little suspicious of you. Did you do that on purpose?
Do I look like a man with a plan? I'm not a schemer. But anyways, here's my master plan coming together. I think it's an important question if you are in this tier post NFL draft, you're competing, right? We see all of this potential to go for maybe more proven NFL production at running back. Or we could take the young, sexy guy we think in this tier of Jonathan Brooks. So I want to ask you the tough question. Would you rather take a shot on Brooks, or are you looking to go for veteran production at running back here?
I do like taking a shot on Brooks, depending on what running back we're going to compare with. As you just mentioned, we just talked about the trades from Dynasty Daddy. I'm probably going to take Jonathan Brooks over Josh Jacobs right now, just because of the efficiency concerns, the contract only being 1 year. James Cook, I'm going to take him over James Cook too, because we've seen James Cook hasn't always been the goal line back, and Josh Allen is largely a goal line back with Ray Davis and a collection of other guys. Achan, I'm still going to take ahead of him. Kyron as well. And I'm also going to take Saquon over him still because he's in a great situation and productive. But the last two names I'll bring up is Rashad White and Pacheco. Who would you take between Brooks and Rashad White versus Pacheco?
So if it's a half PPR or less, I might take Pacheco over Brooks. When the pass catching possibilities out of there, I like him. In a full PPR, I would take the upside, the youth of Brooks. I don't know if I see the Chiefs re-signing Pacheco. White, I'm also taking Brooks, even though we just saw him do incredibly. Bucky Irving scares me a little bit there. I think he has the potential to even be a better version of Rashad White, who was not a very efficient runner. So I think I stalled a little bit just to get to that answer. I didn't know you were going to ask me of give me Brooks over both of those guys confidently.
There we go. I think one sneaky little part. Do you remember last year when Andy Dalton came in for QB sneak for Bryce Young? I don't think that Bryce Young is going to be. He's not going to be taking this QB sneak, so I think that might even lend itself that Jonathan Brooks is like 100% going to be in there for the short yardage, running plays. I don't know. That just crossed my mind, and that's kind of nice to have that peace of mind. Whereas with James Cook, Josh Allen's going to give you a QB sneak. I think it's a little interesting note for Jonathan Brooks. Now, Justin, since David isn't here, you have to answer some questions, not just ask them here. This is a very interesting tier because historically we always say to take a 25 first for these types of picks in this range. However, is it weird because sometimes the guy you might have at 109 might be available 201? Walk me through your thought process for turning these picks into 25 firsts.
I personally want to wait until I'm on the board to try to turn these picks into 25 firsts because, well, you probably still should, in principle, always be looking to roll the 111, the 110 into a 25 first, even in this year's class, just because some of these guys are probably going to miss. If somebody is looking to get in there to get a guy ahead of time, usually they're looking to get in there to get one or two of these guys. If they're looking at the 110, they've probably done the math and they know there's going to be at least one guy still available at the 110. And if someone else goes out of order, there might be two guys that they really like there. So I think that there's a chance that if it hits where there's a guy that gets taken earlier, you might be able to get more for it on the clock. We've seen in kind of our very first league, which has a little bit of a home league vibe to it, Troy Franklin go at the 109. So when something like that happens, every pick after it becomes more valuable. So depending on who you have in your tiers, also people have guys like Keon Coleman. People have Bo Nix going at the 108 in some leagues, pushing down we've seen Brock Bowers fall to the 111 in one league, even though there was no tight end premium. People were still excited to try to trade up for that pick. rookie draft fever. I'm not trying to move them till they're on the clock. And then when they are on the clock, I think what I'm just looking for ideally is, can I get a 25 first and a 25 third, or a 25 first and Tyler Lockett, or if I'm looking for running back and I would otherwise be taking Jonathan Brooks, a 25 first and Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. These guys who are worth maybe a third or a little bit more, or the actual cash price of a third itself. Don't tell anyone I'm negotiating with. I probably would just take the 25 first straight up, but just don't tell them. I don't want them to ask for that. But I'm trying to eke out more if I can.
Right, yeah, you don't want to show your hand, get as much value as you can in these negotiations. Justin, what if the draft pick has already been made? What are you doing with the players that you drafted in this same context here?
So at this point, if I've already drafted the player, there's none of that like selling window right now of they actually get to make the pick. They get the adrenaline. They're excited on the clock with this opportunity. So I don't think I have that additional value. If someone comes to me with a good offer, like I might honestly, I probably would if someone offered me a 25 first for one of these guys. And unless it's Brooks and he's like a running back that I'm absolutely depending on this year, which is a scary thing to do, I'm probably taking the 25 first again, unless I know they're a super team. I kind of have to consider that just a little bit. I would much rather wait for draft hype. If I get an offer and I don't think the offer is going to go away, I might just kind of say, like, I don't know, like, I'll consider this. Like, can I think on it? But if you added a third to it again, like, I would definitely take this deal. And that's honestly partially true because I do want to see how these guys steam up over camp. They're probably not going to lose any value before they play down in the NFL, but they will be in the best shape of their life. If it's Jonathan Brooks, he'll be ahead of schedule on his injury. If it's Lad McConkey, he'll be showing how he should have been used in Georgia the whole time. If it's Brian Thomas Jr., he'll be showing how he's ready to take over being a one now that Neighbors isn't there. There'll be all of these opportunities to sell later. So I kind of lean towards waiting towards more like off-season hype pieces, or until someone like again gives me that little bit of a plus. Like the first plus a third or the first plus a veteran is still the goal mark I'm going towards. But just understanding people aren't excited until training camp comes.
Yeah, there's always hype pieces in the offseason, especially for these rookies. I mean, even for guys like Allen Robinson coming to the Rams. I mean, sheesh. Oh my gosh, he's making all these contested catches in the red zone. Yeah, it's definitely going to happen for the rookies, so I can't disagree with you there. Yeah, those are some good suggestions, though. But let's move towards who we would suggest to draft here in this range.
All right, so now we're going to take a look and we're going to just essentially tell you who we are taking at every pick, 109 through 201 in this tier. Couple caveats right off the back. It's a tier. Take your guy. We don't have guys like Coleman, Penix in this tier. Any of those other guys we mentioned at the beginning, we have them a little bit lower. If you really believe in Coleman, we can't knock you for it. We personally don't as much. Take your guy. We're just going to tell you who we would take at each spot and a little bit of a justification why, but we understand that everyone kind of in this tier is somewhat interchangeable. We're going with a 1.75 tight end premium with no points per carry as our standard format. With the points per carry, David makes a really good point that Brooks probably is the 109 or in heavy consideration there. So, with all of that kind of caveat being said, JP, who is our consensus at the 109?
At 109 here is going to be Brian Thomas Jr., and this is on my personal rankings who I would take as well. So good as a junior. He had 17 touchdowns, I believe is what it was. And David made a point in one of our rookie draft series that the guys that have had 15 plus touchdowns in college, they've been darn good in the NFL. So he is a little bit of a risky prospect, but landing with the Jaguars, stepping into the X wide receiver role, the receiver room is not great on the outside. It's Gabe Davis, and they did have Zay Jones, but they actually cut him, so it's even more open. And I think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. Brian Thomas is a big ceiling, and yeah, I like him here at the 109 spot at the top of the tier.
Absolutely. I just took him at the 111 an hour or two ago in our draft that we're having tonight, and I was ecstatic to get that. At the 110, I'm going to take Xavier Worthy, who also went in the 110 spot in that draft. I love this guy. You heard me earlier in the episode. Kansas City Chiefs, baby, speedy wide receiver. They traded up for him. Amazing production. We talk a lot about the profiles of all these guys earlier on. Patrick Mahomes is throwing to him. You have Marquise Hollywood Brown only there for 1 year. Who knows how long Kelsey's going to be there? This guy, I could see him really growing and just having a phenomenal career with him. I'm all in. We all agree that he is a very exciting prospect in this landing spot. So that is our consensus guy. Who do we have at the 111, JP, as our consensus?
At 111, it is Jonathan Brooks. He was having an amazing junior year last year. He was behind Bijan and Roshan Johnson, if you guys didn't know. So he wasn't very productive as a freshman and sophomore, but he was exploding last year before he tore his ACL. He's a guy you can rely on in the red zone as a goal line running back. He can catch the ball, and he's very explosive with enough size to be a workhorse as well. So running backs have just been getting devalued in rookie drafts, especially when they're not top 10 picks like Jameer Gibbs and Bijan. So this could prove to be a really nice pick, a good steal here. But it's just that ACL, we don't know, if he's going to be super productive year one. I think that's part of it. But I think his ceiling is very high and could be a top 10 dynasty running back if he shows out in the first, 6 to 8 weeks as a rookie.
Yeah, he's someone I'm very excited about. I have 2 shares so far in my rookie drafts. Love having him there. Next guy we're going to go with is Ladd McConkey. He's a guy that you bring up a really good point that there's a very good chance he has the second best production season as a rookie. I think we all think Marvin Harrison Jr. as the wide receiver 1, probably going to have the best production just because he's got a good quarterback and he's the clear 1. Well, Ladd has a good quarterback, and we think he is the clear 1. So definitely a path to production. Justin Herbert throwing to him, absolutely exciting. They wanted him. They made a move for him. I think that there's a really good chance that you're right and that he will be the guy that when we're like talking redrafting this draft class, like should he have been the 109? But you can definitely make that case about all of these guys that they all could have that. Should he have been the 109 to it? That's why it's a tier. But he is a guy that is going at the back end so often of it that if I can get this guy at the 112 or 201, I'm ecstatic to be doing that.
Yeah, I think he's probably the safest wide receiver in this range. Maybe his ceiling is a little bit lower, but he's got a great quarterback, like you said. And Neighbors, he's going to have to beat him out for the second best, rookie season. But I think he's got a chance to do it because of the offense that he's in. The Giants' offense might be pretty rough, but we'll see on that. But at the 201, the last pick that we have in this tier, the last player is Bo Nix. He was drafted top 12 in the NFL draft. In a Superflex league, it's not easy to get quarterbacks. Starting quarterbacks are not easy to come by unless there's somebody like Daniel Jones who people think aren't going to be a starter next year. But Bo Nix, you at least know is going to be starting for 2 years as long as he's not absolutely atrocious. And he's with Sean Payton. Teamed up also with his college wide receiver, Troy Franklin. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that kind of get you a little bit excited about Bo Nix. Most people seem to think Sean Payton is a great offensive mind. I think he is too. So I think that Bo Nix, he does have limitations, but I do think that Sean Payton will put him in the best situation to be productive.
Yeah, if you can get a first round quarterback at the 201 who has a starting job, pretty solid value, and I would be excited to make that pick as well. So again, at the 109, Brian Thomas Jr., then 110, we have Xavier Worthy, 111, we have Jonathan Brooks, 112, Ladd McConkey, and 201, we have Bo Nix, and this is our tier outside of those players who have more of those elite profiles that we still think are just exciting pieces to either move around or trade for incredible value.